Hi everybody, Rad Mom here. Welcome back to the garden. Today we're back with a new guest to the channel. But first, like the video if you enjoy my content and subscribe to the channel to let the algorithm know that. And we're going to be jumping in with the Rational National. Let's go. Okay, so the important thing about this one is the framing. It's yet another effort by mainstream channels to insist upon that certain framing of things that they want to be true, right? Marjorie Taylor Greene thanks Bill Maher. After we all know what Bill Maher was talking about the other day, right? So, let's see.
Which means if we follow this trajectory, we will all be gay in 2054.
They always cut him off right there. The audience gives a good laugh right there, but that's not actually the punchline. Aside from the fact that, as we'll get into, gay doesn't begin to cover it. And that is absurd, obviously, on its face anyway. The punchline's actually, and then who will buy this chair? And it's like the ugliest recliner you've ever seen. Ha ha ha. Gender stereotypes are dumb. Ha ha ha. Towing the line. But they always cut that part out.
Comedian and host of Real Time on HBO, Bill Maher, did one ridiculous segment on LGBTQ youth. So I'm going to play a piece of this for you and discuss.
Why are you going to bother? You've already said that it is ridiculous.
Broken down over time, the LGBT population of America seems to be roughly doubling every generation. According to a recent Gallup poll, less than 1% of Americans born before 1946, that's Joe Biden's generation, identify that way. 2.6% of boomers do, 4.2% of Gen X, 10.5% of millennials, and 20.8% of Gen Z.
20% of my kids' generation is not gay. But like that umbrella keeps expanding, right, to cover more and more different things. And as has been discussed in other places, being a transgendered person or, wanting to somehow be the opposite sex is not the same thing as being sexually attracted to the opposite sex at all. Being homosexual does not require any sort of special treatment, special medical treatment, special surgeries, nothing. You just have to let them live their lives. And not to mention queer, which has been, massaged out to mean anything, essentially. So, 20% of people in that age group are not homosexual. They're not identifying as homosexual. They're identifying as a lot of different various things.
Which means if we follow this trajectory, we will all be gay in 2054. Yes, part of the rise in LGBT numbers is from people feeling free enough to tell it to a pollster, and that's all to the good. But some of it is, it's trendy. Penis equals man? Okay, boomer. Remember, the prime directive of every teen is anything to shock and challenge the squares who brought you up.
Now, that's kind of shallow, right? Much analysis. So, wow.
Dr. Erica Anderson is a prominent 71-year-old clinical psychologist who is herself transgender and who now says, I think it's gone too far. The LA Times summarizes, she's come to believe that some children identifying as trans are falling under the influence of their peers and social media. If you attend a small dinner party of typically very liberal upper-income Angelenos, it is not uncommon to hear parents who each have a trans kid having a conversation about that. What are the odds of that happening in Youngstown, Ohio?
What are the odds of that happening at all? They make up such a small percentage of the population. What are the odds of that happening at a dinner party where you more than one person, I feel like that's kind of astronomical just anyway.
If this spike in trans children is all natural, why is it regional? Either Ohio is shaming them or California is creating them.
Like both things can be true. But again, it's not just about transgender and it's not just about gay. And like, Bill, they're not the same thing.
Or maybe it's easier to identify as LGBTQ in California compared to Ohio.
I mean, yeah, probably. But like, that doesn't. It's also easier to do a lot of things in California, okay? And it's easier to do some other things in Ohio. I spent way too many years in Ohio, and it's really easy to get beer there. You can drive through a liquor store and buy beer from the seat of your car. But you can't get marijuana anywhere. Never been to California, but I hear the marijuana is plentiful and they don't like so much the drinking and the driving, so. Or the doing anything in the driving. So I'm guessing they don't have drive-through liquor stores. My point is that it's a cultural difference, and he's about to say that the cultural differences are allowing, something organic to shine through, and I don't believe that at all, obviously.
Maybe that's the reason. Maybe you mentioned that yourself, basically in the middle of the segment, yet forgot it by the end. So, this is 2 minutes of a much larger 9-minute segment. I'll link to below the video if you want the full context. But it was essentially this, that, there are more youth that now identify as LGBTQ, and he thinks it's because it's trendy and not because they're actually, part of the community. First off, the main point here for me is, who cares?
That's a really good question, right? That's the same thing they kept saying last summer. I can't believe it was that long ago when we were looking at the Young Turks responding to Dave Chappelle. Why do you care? Why does he care? Why do you? Why is everyone so insistent about talking about this, and why do they keep using the same words?
Like, even if that is the case, even if everything he said is true, who cares? Isn't the bigger deal that you're having child services attempt to rip their kids away from them because their kids identify as trans? Isn't that more of a deal? So this is from March 18th, dreading the knock at the...
This is a really hard one for me because, on the one hand, I mean, yeah, the only reason that a kid would believe something like this is because there's something going on in their family, speaking from experience, okay? Um, for me, it really was just, I'm actually not sure what it was for me. I was not, as far as I know, you know, touched inappropriately or really pressured to be one way or the other, but a lot of it was cultural messages, and I just did not have the kind of support at all or guidance that I needed, and that's not necessarily a reason to have a person be taken from their parents, but like if the parents are supporting their delusion, yeah, that's called enabling, and that's a form of abuse. So, I don't know about taking them, just not raiding the house and dragging them away, but like you should definitely be investigating these kinds of things. And I think many of us are in agreement that this is some kind of a child abuse in one form or another. But, it's Texas. I feel like they're not doing it in good faith. I feel like they're not doing it because they actually are concerned about the welfare of the children. Because as we all know, once a child is actually born, political conservatives are really just not interested. Are they? Unless they're a political pawn, they have no idea.
In Texas are terrified for their families. Now, this ruling was paused at some point, but it's back on now. This is from May 20th. Texas resumes investigations into parents of trans children. Families' lawyers confirm. So this is what they are doing.
Not
this
raids.
Is blatantly fascism.
All right, wait. Blatantly fascism, huh? Okay. But so, what if these parents were meth heads and they were being investigated by child services. You'd be fine with that, right? No, or alcoholics even. Let's just go with something more pedestrian. Neighbors. Yeah, the parents are alcoholics. Raging alcoholics. Unemployed. Completely neglecting the children and just drinking all the time. And, I mean, that would be totally a reason to take the children, right? That wouldn't be blatantly fascist, would it? That would clearly be abuse. So when you approve of the motive, it's not fascist, and when you don't, it is. I am not a political scientist, but I don't think that's how that works.
Yet, this isn't his concern. He's not concerned about this. There's no giant segment about how disgusting this is. No, his focus is on how trendy it is to identify as LGBTQ.
Yeah, this is a different aspect of the situation entirely. So, like, I think this is whataboutism, right? This is a legitimate point of discussion, but it is only tangentially related to how and why these ideas are spreading. Excuse me.
Who cares? If that's the case, who cares? But the reality is, I mean, we know the reality. You look at something like this, and I've shown this graph before because it really displays just how much society, the impact society has on people on people's ability to be themselves. So this is a history of left-handedness, rate of left-handedness among Americans by year of birth, 1880 to 2000. You think all of a sudden in 1960, 1980 and beyond, there were just more left-handed people? No. It's because before then, it was essentially beaten out of them.
Yeah. Well, this one made me laugh. Made me laugh so hard. Because right here, you're looking at an individual who is both. Actually, one of them went away. Funny that. And left-handedness, well, handedness in general, is actually something that can be measured in the brain. How about that? Reliably. And they've known this for a long time. Okay. Handedness was actually a pet subject of mine back in the day because I'm a nerd. So, yeah, it's true. They used to beat them to make them use their right hand because the left hand was considered evil and whatever, and we all know how ridiculous that is now. But yeah, it's not. One of them is an actual thing.
But by the 1960s, 70s, it was okay to be left-handed openly. It's the exact same thing with the LGBTQ community, and why there's differences between places like California and Ohio.
No, it's really funny because it was pretty acceptable to be openly whatever in the 70s from what I've been told. A lot of places, and that was kind of the whole zeitgeist at the time. Was just sort of open-mindedness and forward-thinking and modernity and pushing, disregarding conventions and all that sort of stuff. Goodness knows they left a big enough cultural imprint to that effect, right? So, and yet somehow we didn't have this then. We didn't have this rash of children, children. That's the thing that boggles my mind. The children, we all know the children don't know anything. We all were a child at some point. And we all remember believing shit that was just really, really dumb in retrospect, right?
He should know this. He used to be aware of this. I mean, Bill Maher has definitely gone a lot more conservative. And you see that by who watches the show now. Marjorie Taylor Greene tweeting out this segment saying, "Thank you, Bill Maher." That gives you a little indication into how stupid this entire thing was.
Then why in the world have you spent however long you've spent talking about it? Why did this need to be addressed? And why is this the one sort of example you give around him? I have no idea why, or even, if, I guess, maybe she was, I don't know, why she was watching Bill Maher. You'd think, being a government representative, she would have more, better things to do. But this framing, this forced teaming of people who understand that the world hasn't actually changed. And it is bizarre to think that any sort of religious conservatives have a better grip on reality than any kind of collectivists. Isn't that weird? But here we are. And the evidence is becoming just insurmountable, right? But this guy is just insisting on this forced steaming of the only way that you could possibly even question, which is what Maher's bit was about, was that when things change this much this fast, you should be allowed to ask questions. That was his thesis statement, essentially, which you did not see here at all. Even though he says it several times, of course. But to even question it, you must be just a rabid conservative. And of course, Bill Maher didn't used to, feel this way about trans people, because this shit 20, 25 years ago was not a thing. It was not 10 years ago, even. It was not really a part of the cultural discussion. Certainly not such that it was appearing on, the talk shows on the reg. So to say that Bill Maher didn't used to have this stance, well, that's true, because nobody used to have a stance on this at all. It's very disingenuous. The whole framing is very disingenuous, and they just are, it's like I say, it's been almost a year, and he's using these same words that they were using last summer to try and write off Dave Chappelle, of all people. You want to talk about something that's bizarre. Where's your script?
When Marjorie Taylor Greene is one of your biggest fans. Now, people, point out or try to attempt to say that Bill Maher's always been like this. He's always been this concerned. No, he hasn't. Maybe personally he has, but his focus from his show has not generally been on stuff like this. He used to focus on important issues.
There it is again. This is ridiculous. This isn't important. Then why are we talking about it? If he's just some old crank, just cranking on. I'm sorry, but that's a dog bites man story, right?
And now, even though he's always had, some conservative positions, and that's him, but in terms of the focus of his show, what actually matters, how he uses his platform, it used to be about focusing on more important issues.
I feel like Bill Maher's show, regardless of which one you're talking about, which iteration of the Bill Maher show you're talking about, has always been about whatever the fuck Bill Maher wanted to talk about that day.
And now it's garbage like this. It is very bizarre. But, as somebody who used to watch the show on a regular basis, I'm almost embarrassed to say that now. But, like, years ago, he was not like this. I used to enjoy the show, even if there were, times where I was like, I don't really agree. But it's, it's fine to watch people you don't agree with. You don't have to agree with everything that anybody says.
Except on this topic, right?
But since then, watching a show is basically watching, like, this. If people wonder about what a conservative comedy is, this is conservative comedy.
Except that you cut out all the comedy, man.
When you focus on stuff like this that doesn't matter at all, when you try and construe it as being the reason this is happening is because, pressure from the left as opposed to society generally.
Okay, so it doesn't matter at all. What? And accept our framing.
And how things change and evolve and how people are allowed to be themselves or not allowed to be themselves. Like, to not understand that and engage with that, or engage with the actual human rights abuses that are going on, and have that as your focus when you have a massive show on HBO. I mean, it goes to show you that at this point, there's very little difference at this point between Bill Maher and someone like Sean Hannity.
Ouch. Huh. Sean Hannity is the hypocrite that, The Daily Show makes fun of all the time on Fox News. Oh my goodness. Ouch, right? Sean Hannity also is not funny. Not remotely, and he doesn't try to be fair, but he does contradict himself an awful lot. I don't know that Bill Maher does that. You just pretty much said that he's always been this way, right? I mean, I don't know. What was that other thing?
Human rights to
Oh,
not
yeah, to not focus on the human rights abuses. Oh, yeah, you mean like the mutilation of young people? Or the just insane kinds of abuse that go on in families where one of them is not a gynecologist, thinks they're a woman, right? Not to mention the siphoning of resources away from people who actually need them. Yeah, no, but we wouldn't want to get down to the root of it and talk about how any of these ideas are actually spread. No. We wouldn't want to do that when we can do whataboutism all day long. And if you don't engage with their framing, then you're just like Sean Hannity. Yeah, that's some strong reasoning, isn't it? Oh my goodness, it's ridiculous. Thank you so much for tuning in. I have been Rad Mom, and this has been some bullshit from a mainstream source. Once again, coming at us with that exact same framework, the exact same words, the exact same contradictions. Well, this isn't important. Now let's talk about it for 10 minutes. Sure. You don't feel compelled to reframe it or anything. That's not what's going on here. It's so obvious. I would love to know why. Why is this so important to them? Why this? But I think that is some speculation for another time. Like the video if you enjoyed. Subscribe to the channel for more stuff like this. And I will be doing more radical feminist material analysis at you later. Have a good one. Bye.